Viagra is one of these compounds that I think is interesting. It modulates this nitric oxide pathway.
Well, it potentiates nitric oxide.
What does that mean?
Means that drugs like Viagra are dependent upon the cell's ability to make nitric oxide. So if the patient who's taking Viagra, if they can't make nitric oxide, then the drug is without effect.
Got it.
So and we know that 50% of the men that are prescribed Viagra for erectile dysfunction don't respond with better erections. So nitric oxide activates the second messenger, and Viagra prevents the breakdown of that second messenger. But without nitric oxide being produced, there's no second messenger, so that Viagra can't work. So, and I think there's a misconception of Viagra, because I still today hear a lot of physicians say, oh yeah, you can take Viagra, it's a nitric oxide donor. No, it's not a nitric oxide donor. You need to review your biochemistry. Nitric oxide turns the switch on, and Viagra keeps it on. That's the reason you're warned against 4-hour erections and unsafe drop in blood pressure. But the non-responders are non-responsive because they're not making any nitric oxide to activate that second messenger system.
And is this because they're not consuming enough nitrate in the diet, or what?
It's because, they may not be getting enough nitrate. Typically the reason is the enzyme in the lining of the blood vessel is uncoupled and dysfunctional. Because when we get vasodilation, so it's nitric oxide that's produced in the endothelial cells, and that nitric oxide diffuses into the smooth muscle, where it activates an enzyme called guanylyl cyclase. It leads to cyclic GMP, and then Viagra prevents the breakdown of cyclic GMP. So it's really a vascular issue, and the reason that Viagra works is it potentiates the vasodilatory effects of nitric oxide. And so, there's data showing that, people who had been on Viagra for 4 years were, protected from dementia.
Yeah.
It has exercise-enhancing performance.
Yeah.
It reduces pulmonary pressures. I think there's a couple of PD-5 inhibitors now FDA approved for pulmonary hypertension. And then you mentioned before, there's a study showing that it turns on protein synthesis.
Muscle protein synthesis, yeah. On par with like 100 to 200 milligrams of testosterone.
That's a potent response.
That's it, yeah, in this one study. So how do you think it works then so it potentiates nitric oxide?
Yeah, so if we look at how nitric oxide works, and there's kind of two main pathways. There's what we call cyclic GMP dependent signaling, and there's cyclic GMP independent signaling. But most of the early data on the work on was looking at nitric oxide activating guanylyl cyclase, leading to cyclic GMP, and then cyclic GMP initiates a number of signaling cascades, right? So it turns on protein kinase G, it mobilizes calcium, smooth muscle relaxation. It turns on mitochondrial biogenesis by activation of PGC1 alpha, induces mitochondrial biogenesis, but it also can help turn on protein synthesis and prevent protein breakdown. So I think there's several different mechanisms how it can do this, but at the end of the day, it's improving blood flow, so you're getting more oxygen to the downstream cells, you're delivering more nutrients, you're improving mitochondrial function, and the energetics of the cell become much better. And now you can improve cellular turnover, you can turn on protein synthesis, and I think that's how it's working.
Is there any downside to these drugs?
Yeah, all you got to do is listen to the commercials, right? You can have an unsafe drop in blood pressure. There's vision loss, this blue vision you start to see. But really the only thing we worry about is an unsafe drop in blood pressure and then priapism, an erection lasting longer than 4 hours. Because
could be the time.
Some people don't understand, but the problem is when you have a 4-hour erection, so there's no blood flow in there, right? So when you get an erection, you get engorgement and you get an increase in blood flow. But what happens, it compresses those blood vessels, the veins, so you don't get the outflow. So now you've got a shaft that has the same blood supply in it for 4 hours that's really oxygen deprived. So you're using up that oxygen. And so over time, that tissue can become necrotic. Oh my God, wow. And then you'll lose the function of that organ for the rest of your life. So it's a very serious condition. And, it's, you see it in sickle cell patients with vaso-occlusive crises and priapisms. And so you have to go manually and with a needle, take the blood out of the corpus cavernosum to allow that tissue to now get new blood supply in, oxygenate it, because it's basically ischemic and hypoxic for 4 hours and leads to necrosis.
That's no joke.
No, it's very serious.
Wow,
I mean,
yeah.
people think it's a joking matter, but no, it's a very serious clinical condition.
Wow.
And it's named after Priapus, right? The Greek god of erections. But it's
I didn't know that.
No, Priapus was a Greek god of the erection. He had this huge phallus and erection, so they properly named it a priapism.
Who's at risk for priapism? Like,
well, you see it primarily in sickle cell patients who have
Okay.
vaso-occlusive crises, and so there's from spinal cord injuries you can get a priapism, but really it's from Viagra and overdosing on it.
wow. I'm not gonna lie. I've taken it before a workout a few times because the pump that you get is incredible.
Yeah.
And there is this one, and I'm not recommending that people do this. There are risks, obviously, as we've just discussed. But based on this one small study, and I know a lot of people in the fitness community are not, necessarily disclosing that they're doing it, but it's fairly common. And so I've tried it a handful of times, and it's, for me, I mean, it's been a great pre-workout
Yeah.
on the days that I've tried it.
Improves blood flow, and
Yeah.
if you're going to work out, you need good circulation to get oxygen to the working skeletal muscles and to, mobilize and get rid of the waste products. Then it can improve performance.
But it is fascinating that, risks aside, that by boosting by potentiating nitric oxide, boosting blood flow, that there seems to be all this upside. Potentially reduced risk for dementia.
Reduced risk of Alzheimer's, heart attack, stroke, reduces pulmonary hypertension, improves athletic performance. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of synthetic compounds that they're inhibiting biochemical reactions, but this one certainly, because it potentiates nitric oxide. So what we focused on is let's take a step up the pathway, because if we can just restore nitric oxide production, then probably there's not a need for Viagra or PD5 inhibitors. Because once you supply the primer or the first signaling molecule to activate all these downstream signaling, then just let the cell do its job, let the body do its job, because it'll activate second messenger, and then phosphodiesterase activity will increase, break down cyclic GMP, and then turn the signal off. So just let the cell do its job, give the body what it needs, and let the body do its job.
Yeah.
But I think what we're finding is that if you want to use that as an ergogenic aid or as an aid for sexual function, then if we go upstream and improve nitric oxide production or take our nitric oxide products, then you can lower the dose of these, make them safer without side effects, and potentiate the effects of that
Even further.
Wow.
Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.